But I did notice that this year there were a fair few websites that only did their best of lists towards the end of the year or beginning of January, releasing something in the second week of November, claiming in the copy or in the text that we've listened to everything that came out this year, and then there's these glaring albums that aren't there. I mean, 7 albums out of my top 30 were released in November or December. Greetings, Legion. Welcome to episode 301 of Into the Necrosphere. After 5 glorious weeks away, I am back ready to kick off the 2026 campaign. And as always, we launch into the year by looking back at the year that's gone by and celebrating the very best releases of the past 12 months. My top 30 of 2025 countdown begins this week. I will be sharing with you my numbers 30 to 21 on my list, and I'm also going to be joined by the mighty Nathan Glover from the band Graveir, a very good friend of mine, a high-ranking member of the Legion, and a man with impeccable taste. He will be sharing his top 10 releases of 2025. It's all coming your way very shortly, but before we get to that, we need to kick the show off with some unsanctioned filth. From Australia, this is a band called Inexorable Warping from the EP of the same name, and this is a track called Ethereal Throne of Malice. Inexorable Warping kicking us off this week. There was a track called Ethereal Throne of Malice taken from their self-titled debut EP that was incidentally produced by my guest this week, Nathan Glover from Graveir. I will post the Inexorable Warping amp wall link in the description to the podcast. Head over there, buy yourself some music if you like what you heard, and make sure you sign up to Amp Wall. I had Chris Grieg, the founder of Amp Wall, on here a couple of years ago. I'm going to have him back on the show at some point to give us an update, not only on Amp Wall, but on his various musical endeavors. I've mentioned this before, but I think it's great for us to have an alternative to Bandcamp, especially an alternative that was created by one of our own. So Amp Wall is something I believe in, I endorse, and I strongly suggest that you guys get on board with it as well. A reminder, of course, that if you are in an unsigned band yourself and you want me to hear your stuff, you can now contact me on intothenecrosphere.com. There's a contact page in there. Hit me up. Let me know where to find your stuff. If I like what I hear, I will feature it on the show, and I will feature it on the website as well. So moving forward, episode playlists, unsanctioned filth, alumni, and various other things will all be captured and featured on the website. And you can head there in case you've missed anything, or if my accent confused you, or whatever the case may be. Everything is going to be kept on there. And a massive thank you to Santelia for the great job that she did with that website. Great feedback that I've had for it so far as well. In case you don't know, if this is your first time checking out Into the Necrosphere, I am a card-carrying member of the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse, the Cosa Nostra of podcasting, dedicated to bringing you the highest quality entertainment from Monday to Sunday. And we kick off every Monday with Horror Wolf 666. That's brought to you by Brandon Legion. Yours truly, Old Jackson, casts hexes and slays poses right here on Into the Necrosphere every Tuesday. On a Wednesday, we've got your first double shot. It starts with Iblis Manifestations, hosted by Cheyenne from the band Trivax. You also have the long-running Everything Went Black, and that's brought to you by Mike Hill from the band Tombs. Mike Hill returns on a Thursday for Necromaniacs alongside his co-hosts, the Sheriff Mike Scondado and Professor Jeff Kashid. They recently celebrated their 300th episode, so big congratulations to those guys. It truly is one of my favorite podcasts every week, one I never miss. If you like horror movies, they review new and old horrors. And they always have a grand old time doing so. It's super entertaining, super informative. Love those guys, and looking forward to what the next 300 episodes have to bring them. Finally, on a Thursday and then again on a Sunday, we've got the Sinister Minister, the Reverend Carl Haikara, taking us on a curated tour through the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric with his podcast, Soul Knox. And he will be joining me next week for part 2 of my top 30 of 2025 countdown. It's kind of become a tradition where we've got Nathan Glover on part 1, we've got Carl Ikara on part 2, and then Mike Hill from Tombs will be joining me for part 3. So that is coming up next week. Coming up later on in the show, a return to the weekly news rant. You guys haven't had one of those for a while, and there's a bunch of bands that needed to come under the hammer. I checked out new music this week by Hellripper, Fate Unburied, Archvile King, Immolation, Permafog, and Temple of Void. You guys sent in a bunch of cool questions as well, including what my top 10 albums were that were released between 2020 and 2024, what my 5 goals were for 2026, some of my goals for the podcast, what albums I'm looking forward to most, and a bunch more. That is coming up later on in the show. But first, the countdown to unveil The very best albums of 2025 begins right now as I welcome to Into the Necrosphere, not for the first time and most definitely not for the last time, Nathan Glover from Graveir. Well, firstly, I hope that your 2026 has gotten off to a good start, mate.
Yeah, it has a starting with a bang, to be honest. So I think I might have mentioned, but next week we're playing with Mork.
Yeah, very exciting.
So yeah, back rehearsing, back getting ready. Labels back in full swing. We've got a few releases that are in production, and then planning ahead, obviously for I guess Essence for this year. So the 2025 one was fantastic. So we'll shape up to do that again, and yeah, and you know what the bigger plans are for the label. So we'll probably have some announcements early in the year. So yeah, it's been all systems go.
Yeah, and you've got a couple of your own releases coming out this year. I know we spoke about it on the news rant when you were on your last time, but just in case anybody doesn't know, Graveir recently signed to Apocalyptic Witchcraft Records. Have you got an idea on when that album is due to be released?
Yeah, look, it's like anything with I could speak to this from running a label myself. You've got a rough sort of time frame in mind, but then you've got a production queue that sort of moves according to how long things take, and you know, yeah, whether there's production delays and what have you. But I think we'd probably be looking. You know, I won't preempt anything official from Connor, but yeah, look, I'd say it's probably around the middle of the year would be my rough.
No,
but what I can guarantee you is that as soon as we have something, you'll be the first to know about it.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm sure there's many people listening to this that are looking forward to it also. I may have to talk to Connor about this, but without revealing any G14 classified secrets, has there been any conversation about partnership of some sort between Gutter Prince Cabal and Apocalyptic Witchcraft Records? Because it's something I thought of when I was on holiday, actually, when you and I were conversing back and forth. And it suddenly struck me, that just seems like a perfect, it seems like a perfect match.
Yeah, so I can't probably speak too much out of school on that, but yeah, look, I think there are probably some ways that we can look to work together. It seems like that it makes sense. So yeah, there'll probably be a little bit more news on that front in future, but I won't sort of preempt that. But yeah.
Your silence speaks volumes,
there's been
mate.
some conversations.
Yeah, no, I was. You know what? Like I said, I was wondering whether you guys had any conversations or whether anything had been tabled. I'm glad to hear that it has. So cool. One thing I want to talk about before we get into this countdown. A couple of years ago, you and I were doing this as is our annual ritual. And we were arguing the toss over the previous Runes of Everest album, the Tool Grimoire. Now, I still have not, that record just doesn't resonate with me. I have gone back to it many, many times, and I don't like it. As much as I think that Exuvia is one of the best records ever, it just doesn't do anything for me. However, you have, I would assume, you've listened to this new Runes of Everest album?
Yep, pre-ordered it. So as soon as that notification popped up, I jumped.
Sweet fancy Moses, it is good. I mean, it feels to me, and I'd love to get your take on this as somebody who was a fan of the previous record, but it feels to me like this is kind of the album that they were aiming for with the previous record, but they nailed it in a way that they weren't able to do on the previous album. It's such a incredibly well-written, I don't know what other word to use here. Smooth running record. Every song kind of naturally flows into the next. It doesn't feel like it's patched together from different parts. It's fucking phenomenal. It's absolutely incredible. And as we talk about best of 2025, there's no chance that's not going to be on my best of 2026.
Okay. Yeah, look, interesting. I'm probably going to take a slightly different tack. There's some really cool parts, and I think Alex is a fantastic songwriter. There's some really, really gnarly stuff. And he's sort of leaned more heavily into some of the the clean vocal parts, which I think maybe to your point is probably nailed a bit more than the dual grimoires, which again I think a large part of why that album really worked for me is because I was in a headspace of writing material at that time, and some of the stuff that he was doing was not that it was directly like, oh, I should go write some Rules of Beverage stuff, but just the ideas of, oh, it's interesting how that's been constructed, or the way that he's approached that. It was helping to fuel that sort of creative spark. So there's a bit of a attachment there for maybe a different reason. So look, I think there's some really cool parts, and you're right, it does flow. It's very easy to listen to. But yeah, I think for me it does feel a little bit disjointed. I think it's just that heavier lean into the clean vocals. I don't know that's necessarily that's disjointed, but it's with a band like that, the good thing is that every album, there's depending on what it is that you like out of the band, there'll be an album that jumps out to you, and for you that's Exuvia, and for me it's Phalacema of a Sheltered League, because I like just how weird and gnarly and horrible it is, and that speaks to me. So again, I think maybe because that's my favorite, this one is leaning maybe more in a direction that is not not my most favorite. But yeah, look, I would say even the worst Ruins of Everest album, whichever one you think it is still going to be a very good album. So by no means is it bad, and people should definitely check it out and see if it is their favorite.
Yeah, no, well, no doubt we'll be talking about it this time next year. We'll each have a year to fully digest it, but I'm probably 20 to 25 listens into it now. Maybe it's because I was expecting something, as disappointing to me personally as the previous one, but fuck me, I love it. I absolutely love it. Anyway, right, we're not here to talk about new music. We're here to talk about, we're here to celebrate 2025. And this is the way it's going to work. 3 parts, this being part 1. We're about to count down my numbers 30 to 21. Then we'll have a short musical interlude, and then it's on to the main event as Nathan shares his top 10. Now, usually, and this is one of the things I love about having you on, you always throw a ton of fucking surprises at me when we do this. The good news for everybody listening this year is that rather than wait for me to get my act together and actually post the bands on social media or in the YouTube comments, if you go to intothenecrosphere.com, I will have a playlist of this episode up straight after, the day that the episode drops. So you'll be able to go and check out all of the music, and then you can comment and go, I can't believe you included that shit, fucking poser, whatever you want to say. So, yeah, so that is the plan. So let's dive into my 30 to 21, and we're going to go with number 30 straight away. Out of the Ukraine, 1914 with Viribus Unitus, put out by Napalm Records on November the 14th. The follow-up to Where Fear and Weapons Meet that came out back in 2021. Interestingly, not as well reviewed on Metal Archives as Where Fear and Weapons Meet, but I personally think this album for me very much flew under the radar when they started putting out singles. And I had a couple of members of the Legion reach out to me and go, have you heard it yet? It's really good. And I was like, oh yeah, I've kind of listened to the new tracks, and it's not really doing much for me. And then they put out the single that featured Aaron Stainthorpe of High Parasite and now formerly of My Dying Bride. And when I heard that, I was just completely hooked. And I think having gone back to the album now and listened to it multiple times, what is striking to me is the atmosphere that they've tried to create, and this feeling of being in the midst of the First World War. I think that they've been able to realize that vision far more effectively on Viribus Unitus than they've been able to do on any of their other albums. I think that the songwriting, when it peaks, so, if I use track 8, the Aaron Stainthorpe track as an example, at its peak, it's the best work they've ever done. It does, at 56 minutes, it does get a little long in the tooth, and I think there's some fat that could have been trimmed off of this. But overall, it is a fucking superb record. If you're a fan of 1914, you will absolutely be in your element listening to it. But I think even if you're not a fan, they present enough new ideas and enough innovation to their sound that it is well worth your time. Any thoughts on that record?
I haven't actually spent much time with this one, and I actually do like 1914, and I know like the albums they've done, I have enjoyed, and you know they execute everything to a high standard, and I would imagine with some of what's going on over in Ukraine at the moment, they're probably executing that album under somewhat difficult circumstances, but from what I gather, it's still done to the same standard, and they haven't really missed a beat on it. But it's just one I haven't sort of gotten around to spending time on. So, but again, following that pattern, I'm expecting that I will enjoy it when I finally get around to it. So.
You raised something there about them being based out of the Ukraine and with everything going on in the Ukraine. I don't know if I read too much into this listening to the record, but from my perspective, I think you can definitely. There's an additional layer of emotion to the music on this album, and I couldn't help but feel like it's based on what they are experiencing as individuals in real time in their country right now. And then as I was pondering it, you think to yourself, well, there's no way that they couldn't be that couldn't impact their writing and their creativity. So in some ways, it kind of makes it even more poignant. But great record, and one I very highly recommend.
Yeah, I will say probably one of the other reasons that I've maybe held off a little bit is that, I mean, that's a conflict that I follow daily. I'm quite. I've spent a lot of time studying sort of geopolitics and history and things like that. So, that, and I think, look, as far as like Western civilization or the things that concern us day to day, it's probably one of the most consequential conflicts. For what the future of our world looks like. So yeah, I think given the subject matter and given that maybe there's a reluctance from and I expect a lot of that emotion will come out in it. So maybe I'm avoiding that because I know that it probably will be a little bit of a emotional experience when I do sit down with it. So I probably just need to accept that and go through it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair point. Okay, we're going to move on to number 29. Now this one, I don't know whether this will surprise anybody. I'm not even preempting it. I'm not preempting it by way of apology or anything, because I'm not apologizing for any of my selections. But Black Braid with Black Braid 3 released independently on August the 8th. Now, there's a lot of people that sob every time that I've had John on the podcast. There's a deluge of fucking stupid comments about how he's an industry plant and he's a poser and they hate Black Braid. I had one fucking nerd who was he was given, rightfully so, the swirly of the week for trying to argue my taste with me, which I just found weird. It's like, okay, I don't mind if you don't like it. I like it. You don't have to try and give me some sort of mathematical equation to convince me that I'm wrong for liking it. I didn't enjoy Black Braid 2 as much as I enjoyed Black Braid 1. Black Braid 1 I thought was a very capable, competent, atmospheric black metal album that felt very North American in its style. Black Braid 2 I thought was more of the same, but a bit too polished. And so it didn't present me with anything necessarily new. And it also didn't, it wasn't enough to make me want to, I wouldn't, between the two, I wouldn't choose to listen to Black Braid 2 over Black Braid 1. Black Braid 3, however, and I think John rightfully pointed this out when he was on the podcast, does present a far more evolved version of, I think, what he set out to do from the first record. The songs are way better written. The way that he weaves instrumentals and atmosphere into the songs, I think, is incredibly well done. I would say the only slight criticism that I would have of the record, and it's not really a criticism, but I don't necessarily think the Lord Belial cover at the end of the record was necessary. If you listen to the album, the final track, and He Became the Burning Stars, it's kind of a perfect way to close off the record. You didn't need that cover at the end. But overall, I think this is this is a record that has enough of the atmospheric elements to keep people happy who've been fans of the band since the beginning. There is some harsher elements that have been added that I think potentially could turn the heads of a couple of, get a couple of new people interested in the band. And what I have found, interestingly enough, since I've had John on the podcast, I have had a fair few people reach out to me to say they enjoyed the chat enough to where they actually went back, listened to the record with an open mind, and they really ended up enjoying it. Again, I didn't set out to do that as far as, having him on the show. I just enjoyed having him on the first time, and when I had the opportunity to get him on a second time, I jumped at it, and I thought that conversation came out really well. But Black Parade 3, really good album. And again, we're talking about Ruins of Beveras being a smooth listening black metal album. This is a smooth listening black metal album. When I was on holiday, I had it on in the car quite a lot, and if you're just driving, and when we were driving from Hermanus, where we stayed in the main through to Cape Town, it's about an hour and a half, 2 hour drive. It's perfect music to listen to in the car. So there you go, number 29. Did you pay any attention to it? I would imagine it's a little too slick for your tastes.
Look, I'm not much of a smooth listening sort of guy, but look, I haven't minded the stuff that I've heard. But it's funny. I think for the kind of music that we're into and what we listen to, it's funny that people are, will kind of wave off murder, all sorts of things. But God forbid you have a few too many drinks and
yeah.
Get over your skis, like that's just forever jail apparently. So it's like for people who want to whinge about cancel culture and things, it's like, well, you going in and making a big deal around how someone makes their music, or whether they had a few too many drinks and had an embarrassing moment or not, you seem to be missing the point, right? Like, so that's not the whole of people. Sometimes people have their moments, and you just need to figure out whether you can get past them or not. And if you can't, shut up. And if you can, get on with it. It's not that hard. So.
Well, like I said at the time, for me, any of us of a particular generation, we all grew up listening to Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Pantera, those three bands alone. I don't think that there wasn't a single tour. There was barely a single concert in the late 80s and early 90s that wasn't followed by some sort of controversy, drunken antics, fights, women being groped and manhandled and God knows what all. And no one seems to give a fuck in 2025 about that. Yet a guy has too much to drink at a festival, runs his mouth a bit too much. Actually retracts what he said on social media, and has since never done anything similar, but people just can't get over it. And ironically, the people that seem to be most fixated on it are the ones that cry most about cancel culture. It's like, he's young. He's
blows my mind.
100%. He's young. He's in a position where he's experiencing a level of attention that, he's not necessarily used to, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many factors that would have, contributed to somebody having a night like that. The fact that he's only had one, I actually think is pretty goddamn mature. And it's to me, it says that it was it genuinely was a situation of, he had a few too many tipples and, acted like an arse. Every single one of us who's ever had a drink has done that.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So yeah, it's always somewhat amusing, right? People aren't good at being consistent, so I don't expect it. But also when people aren't, I'm quite happy to point that out. So
Another thing I admire about Blackbraid is the fact that, you know, after 3 albums, he remains independent. I mean, I know he gets accused of being an industry plant, but I mean, he's legitimately independent. He doesn't work with a record label. His wife does most of his business management for him, and then Katie does his PR. And I think that's a cool thing. I think it's an inspiring thing for bands that haven't been noticed by record labels to go, hey, actually, if you believe in your material and you believe in your art, you can actually do really, really well without the support of a label, without the support of the industry.
Yeah, look, I think one thing you'll pick up too, and we picked up, right? We didn't have any experience running a label, and you'll find it at work, even a lot of the thing that would make you successful versus everyone else is like being 5% more switched on. Did you realize a lot of what happens is from people who barely can string a sentence together a lot of the time, right? So if you're even a little bit better than that, a little bit more motivated, you're probably going to be ahead of most people.
Yeah.
So
no,
yeah,
I agree. Okay, we move into number 28. Now, this one I think you might be a bit more of a fan of. I'm curious to get your views on it. But at number 28, out of Stockholm, Sweden, we've got This Gift Is a Curse. Their new album, Hair, released on Season of Mist. And that was released back in 2020. On March the 7th, 2025. To me, I really, really loved their previous album, A Throne of Ash. It came out in 2019. I think that was on the very first countdown of favorite albums that I did on this podcast. It was on my list. This album really, really steps up the aggression, the ferocity. It's a gritty, grimy, filthy record from start to finish, and it does not let up. For the entirety of its 1 hour, 6 minute runtime, it is just fucking pummeling and brutal. I think as far as performances are concerned, Jonas, the vocalist, who I had on the podcast, and we spoke about the record, does a fucking sensational job. And I got to say, as much as I used to feel that Johan Nordlund, their previous drummer, added something by being a single pedal player, and coming from a kind of hardcore punk background and not necessarily being a traditional extreme metal drummer, I think their new drummer, Christian Augustin, being much more in the vein of a traditional extreme drummer, I do think that he actually adds a lot to the band. And I think his presence has stepped up the intensity of This Gift Is a Curse exponentially. And the final comment that I have to make on it is just as a slight plug for my friends at Fortress Festival. I am really looking forward to seeing them play live. If they can recreate what they did on air with, on stage, I'm going to be fucking blown away.
Yeah, this one was actually on my list when I was sort of working through what my albums were going to be. So obviously I get 10. So they didn't make the top 10, but look, really good album. I think what they do well is, in some respects, sort of black metal, sludge, and hardcore mixed together quite well, right? Just the intensity factor of hardcore marries quite well with black metal, where that element of conviction is often what carries power in the music. So there's a similar channeling, and I think the sludgy elements just add like an oppressiveness that it's just a very, very good combination, and these guys execute it really, really well.
Yeah, I agree. The word you use there, oppressiveness, is absolutely right. It's a suffocating album. It's a record that, as we were talking about smooth listening, this is not a pleasant album to listen to. You really need to be in the mood to tap into that kind of energy. But it is, it's an absolute beast. And kudos to them. I had worried at one point when they were being as quiet as they were being that it was tickets for the band, but glad to see them back. All right, moving along at number 27, we've got Internal Bleeding with Settle All Scores, featuring one of my very favorite people that I've ever had on the podcast, and a guy that, I would consider a friend now, Chris Pervalis on guitars. Anyone knows Internal Bleeding. This was released on October the 17th on Maggot Stomp, and I mean, basically, if you like the band, you love this album. If you hate the band, don't bother. You can skip on a couple of minutes to my next selection. There's nothing about Settle All Scores that's going to convince you to give the band a chance. I, however, was a huge fan of basically everything in their discography, particularly 2018's Corrupting Influence. I liked Imperium from 2014. I think what I particularly enjoy about Settle All Scores is that you've got the groove, the hooks, and the thuggishness, the badassery from previous records. But Chris has kind of allowed his love of vintage Black Sabbath riffing to go into the spotlight a little bit more on this album. And I think what that does is it elevates a lot of these songs, and it makes, some of them a little bit more memorable. And again, overall, I think as a modern, aggressive, groovy death metal album in 2025, I think it works on basically in every regard.
Yeah, I enjoy Chris's appearances on the podcast. I think he's got a really good energy, and that enthusiasm comes across. But I haven't spent a lot of time with this record, to be honest, or Internal Bleeding. I have sort of dabbled and checked a little bit out, but it's always sort of been on my list to come back to and spend some decent time on. So, usually off the back of this podcast, anything that I happen to have missed or not given a lot of attention to, I'll usually go back and play catch up, and often find some really good stuff as a result. So, keen to check this one out.
All right. Well, perfect gym music, I would say. At number 26, out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, we have got Phobocosm with Gateway. That album released on November the 28th through Dark Descent Records. The late release date probably explains why I didn't see this album on many best of lists this year. One thing I just want to say about that, by the way, and I'm not going to suggest that it's my constant mocking and, acerbic remarks that might have led to this, but I did notice that this year there were a fair few websites that only did their best of lists towards the end of the year or beginning of January. No Clean Singing being one. And I do respect that. I like the fact that we're moving towards that, because again, releasing something in the second week of November, claiming in the copy or in the text that we've listened to everything that came out this year, and then there's these glaring albums that aren't there. I mean, I have just by way of giving people some statistics and maybe some hints on what's going to be on my best of list. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 albums out of my top 30 were released in November or December. Out of those, I know of only 2 that I consistently saw on any best of lists. Now, I'm not saying that everything I listen to is brilliant. My taste is flawless and should be accepted by all as this is what your list should look like.
I mean, it is,
some
right?
Of these, well, yeah, of course. But I mean, some of these are legitimately good, and they just seem to be ignored, and they were ignored because these fucking idiots are chasing clicks. They're not actually taking it seriously. They just, they want to be first to put out their pathetic poser lists, and, so everyone clicks and goes, oh, amazing. But anyway, the point that I wanted to make was I like the fact that I see more websites doing it later on. They to me, they're distinguishing themselves from the rest of the flock.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I always like to go through those lists and play catch up in case I've missed anything, because it's just impossible to get to everything. And look, to be honest, one this year was a pickup from an end of year list, and I listened to it and I was like that impressed with it that it pipped something at the last minute. So, it does. It is useful. I did have a question that sprung to mind. What did you think of this 2025 overall as far as releases and what that looked like? Because I don't know if
That's
you
an
found this,
excellent
but I
question.
found it very patchy. There was long stretches where nothing happened, and then there was patches where lots of things happened.
Yeah, so I think that's an excellent question, and we probably should have started off the conversation with just a general summation of 2025. I agree with you. It wasn't as consistent as 2024. As far as with 2024, you could almost be guaranteed that on average, once a week you would there would at least be one good thing to listen to, whereas there were 3-4 weeks that would go by where it just mostly seems to be rubbish. And then all of a sudden, you'd have one weekend where there's like 5 albums that you need to listen to. But I will say this: this was a year where I felt even more spoiled for choice by the end of it than I had felt in 2024, which I didn't think 2024 could be topped. But there were so many albums and so much that came out of the woodwork, either through friends, or through websites like No Clean Singing, that at the in the end it became really hard to pull the list together and have a list that I was fully satisfied with. Again, by way of reference, my approach this year was similar to last year in that I keep track of all of my releases as they get as they come out. Listen to them over the course of the year. Then when I'm on holiday, this year I had 4 weeks, well, actually 5 weeks to be able to do it. I listen to albums back to back, and I'm like constantly changing their position on the list. Some were in, then some were out, then some were honorable mentions, then they were back in. One thing I did do differently this year that actually was quite useful. I had my playlist on Spotify with my top 30 bands, and I put it on shuffle. And it's quite it's sort of a small sample size, if you will, but it's quite an interesting and immediate way to be able to compare back and forth between albums and think, well, actually, this album might be slightly better than that album, or that helped me calibrate where everything is at. But yeah, a lot of thought went into this list. The list, had a strong number of contenders this year, but I do agree with you. It was patchy as far as the consistency of good releases is concerned.
Yeah, and I found the same. It's very hot and cold. But then by volume, by the end of the year, as you said, you're like, oh, wait, no, this was a really good year. But the way that those releases were distributed, there'll be stretches of time where you're like, oh, I need something to listen. Like, I can't remember the last time I brought an album. So, but then you'd buy like 5 or 6 at once. So, yeah, it was an interesting year.
Mm. Back to Phobocosm. Now, I don't know how much time you've ever spent with this band. I think all 4 of their records, and Gateway obviously is included in the 4, is superb. Deprived was the first record they put out back in 2014. Then they put out Bringer of Drought 2 years later. Bit of a lull in their release schedule. Foreordained they put out in 2023, and that was actually I think it was in my honorable mentions list. It was certainly one of the contenders. Gateway is so pummeling and so furious and so violent, it just had to make the list. Dark Descent Records, I love what they've been doing. They are becoming a label that I think is increasingly reliable for putting out good stuff. And as we were talking earlier about album lengths, and we mentioned This Gift is a Curse, we mentioned 1914. This comes in at an economical 35 minutes, and it is a perfect 35 minutes. It's timed the way Once Upon a Cross is timed, where you don't want a second more than what you got on Once Upon a Cross, because that microdose of satanic hatred that you got there was absolutely perfectly timed, perfectly sized. I feel this is the same with Phobocosm. Fucking phenomenal record.
Yeah, this one was definitely on my list for consideration as well. And yeah, big fan of the band. I think what they do well is blending that sort of technical death metal, but kind of marrying it with this Immolation-esque evilness and that weird sort of shifting of tones that they do, and they combine those two elements really, really well. Where it's the technicality is not overshadowing the songwriting, and the atmosphere that they build into it also elevates that are above your sort of bog standard tech death band who spend all their time not to knock tech death generally, but spend all their time learning how to play fast and difficult things, but didn't spend any time learning how to write songs and build anything that people can remember. So, they're master craftsmen at it. This many albums in, and this is a really good record.
And Tech Death for me, I'm not the biggest fan of it. It has to be song forward Tech Death. It can't be look at how well I can play my guitar, look how fast we can blast, and then what I hate the most is the bands that use all these stupid different vocal effects to make the vocals sound really fast. It's just lame. Phobocosm still has at its core the appropriate level of primal guttural violence and aggression that I demand from death metal. And that I say as a segue into my number 25, which is an album I felt a lot of people slept on, and I don't know why. Glorious Depravity out of New York. They put out their second record, Death Never Sleeps, on Transcending Obscurity Records in November the 7th to be exact. And if you did listen to it, firstly, just probably out of interest more than anything else, you would have heard the great Chris Grieg, founder of the Ampwall website and also frontman for the excellent black metal band Woe. You would have heard him on drums. But holy shit, you would have heard 9 songs that kind of tap into the old school Deicide style or approach to death metal. Very groovy, very catchy, very fucking evil sounding. And I will say this, just based on pure execution, like the way that they will throw a break into a song, or the way that they deliver like a perfectly timed, just completely unhinged guitar solo, or the way that Doug Moore, phrases his vocals, or uses his vocals to add an extra hook. I would go as far as to say I think this is if you are a fan of Deicide, this is probably the best thing or the best record Deicide never made after The Stench of Redemption. It is fucking excellent.
Okay, totally missed this one, so guess what is going to be on my list to do as soon as I get a spare minute this weekend. I'll be checking that out.
100% check it out. There's nothing pretty about it. There's no melody. There's no reprieve.
That makes me happy.
There's no clean singing. There's no wimpy shit. It is just fucking meanness from start to finish. Okay, at number 24, we've got Cryptopsy with an Insatiable Violence, out June the 20th on Season of Mist. I am a massive fan of Cryptopsy, as everyone knows, and when I say fan, I am a fan from top to bottom. Blasphemy Made Flesh, all the way to an Insatiable Violence. I personally think that since the self-titled album that they put out back in 2012, they've been on a comeback tear like few others, and they have consistently released quality, extreme, very technical, but increasingly song-forward death metal. I thought As Gomorrah Burns that they put out in 2023 was really, really good. An Insatiable Violence steps it up, and it actually throws in a little bit of a smattering of black metal that I think helps elevate the music even more. If you're a Cryptopsy fan, you'll absolutely be in your element. And when I say Cryptopsy fan, I probably should caveat that by saying if Cryptopsy didn't die for you after None So Vile. But, I'm a fan of None So Vile. I'm a huge fan of this too. So, if you have given up on them, it might be worth revisiting them in 2020, or now 2026.
Yeah, I did give this a listen, but I guess I'm probably in the bucket where the thing that I really enjoyed about Cryptopsy and really needed from them, as far as I know we've talked about musical nutrients before, but the stuff that I needed from them was probably on the. I enjoyed probably Whisper Supremacy, and then I didn't really like Daniel Begg, but I liked Once Was Not, and then after that it just didn't. And I've thought long and hard about what that is. And look, I'm really glad they're still going, because I do think they're an excellent band. The interviews I've heard with Matt, he seems like a really, really cool guy. So there's a part of me that always wants them to do well, but it's probably not. For me, the thing that I need from them, like they've passed me by, but I think I see a lot of kids and stuff turning up to shows, and a lot of people turning up, which is really great to see. And I think, if you get out today and experience Cryptopsy today, you're probably going to get the thing that I got from them back when I heard them. And I think that's fantastic that can happen for someone else for totally different reasons. They might even dive back and really enjoy the old stuff. But yeah, just for me, there's and office too. And I think they've always been fairly technical, but there's just that feeling that something could go wrong or come off the rails. There was some weirdness there in the early stuff that they've gotten too good at being musicians now that it's very hard to bring back. I don't know if that makes
kind
sense.
Of, no, I know what you mean.
The wildness that gets tamed as you get better at your craft, and I think that they're too good. That thing that I wanted, which was the chance that it could all fall apart, it's just not going to happen because they're too good.
Yeah, you want ECW Cryptopsy rather than 2002 WWE Cryptopsy. Yeah,
I think that's probably a good way of looking at it.
All right, well, let's move on to number 23 on my list. Despised Icon Shadowwork, put out on Nuclear Blast Records on Halloween, October 31st. I don't like deathcore. I actually despise it, but man, this band are a massive exception. I have loved them ever since I saw them live. I saw them live supporting. It was either Black Dahlia Murder or Unearth. And I remember not knowing what they sounded like at all, seeing them live and just being totally blown away. And this would have been around 2007, 2008. I then got into the Healing Process, the Ills of Modern Man, which, the Healing Process came out in 2005, Ills of Modern Man, 2007. And they, again, since then have just been consistently very, very good, with the exception of Purgatory that they put out in 2019. I thought that was a bit of a dip down in form, but then Shadowwork, holy fuck. They brought back a lot of the hardcore elements that they had, sort of forgotten about a little bit on Purgatory. Added a little bit of black metal style melody, and I think brought back a lot of the unhinged work or the unhinged element that is heavily amplified by the vocal interplay between Alex Arian and Steve, and I'm probably going to mispronounce his surname here, but Marwa. To me, it's just the perfect Despised Icon album. If you like their music, you're going to love this. If you need something to psych you up at the gym, I mean, there are a few things better that came out in 2025. And one thing I am very much looking forward to is seeing these guys live at some point. I don't know what the touring schedule is like as far as the UK is concerned, but they put on a fucking serious show, even though they're now starting to become, pretty salty dogs themselves as far as age is concerned. But your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I'm like you. I'm also not a big fan of deathcore, but look, if you want a soundtrack to throw someone through a wall to, it's probably a good candidate.
Mike Hill said it best. He said it's music to rob a convenience store to, and I thought that was a perfect description.
I agree.
All right, number 22 on my list, Graveir, Braiding the Stories, released by Season of Mist on June the 6th. Obviously, I had Gal on the podcast. We touched on it as much as he allowed me to ask him about music that he's put out, or that in his words he had recorded over a year ago. I was a fucking enormous fan of the Graveir debut, Ghosts Invited. It came out in 2019, and it's still an album that I go back to. I don't believe that Braiding the Stories tops that record. And it is an album that I found harder to get into because it is sort of broken up into a couple of, almost sort of centerpiece songs, and then they're flanked by these atmospheric instrumentals, interludes, whatever you want to call them. But again, as an end-to-end listen, it does work extremely well. It has moments where, I think they ascend to that level that they were operating at for the debut. And one thing I would definitely say is I feel like Gal, as a clean singer, has gotten a lot more confident and a lot more capable. Like he's clean singing on this record, and some of it may have to do with the production as well. But yeah, if you listen to the title track, for example, track 2 on the record, when he sings the title, braiding the stories in the chorus, it just sounds fucking incredible. I will always miss his black metal vocals. I wish there was something that he was involved in right now where I could hear more of those black metal vocals. For me, those Gorgoroth albums that he was a part of, are phenomenal, and they set the standard, certainly in that era, in my opinion. But Braiding the Stories, really good record. And I know he's got a few other things in the pipeline for this year, so we'll wait to see what he delivers. Again, plug for my friends at Beyond the Gates. I'm very excited about seeing Galsveard live. It'll be my second time seeing Gal in action. I saw him with Gorgoroth probably back in 2005. So this will be my first time seeing Galsveard actually perform.
Yeah, so I mentioned before the album that was like, there was an album that I changed at the very last second. This one just missed out. So yeah, I was a fan of it, and maybe some of the things that made you think that it didn't necessarily top your favorite might have been some of the things that worked for me. So I think that structure does flow as an album listen, and I kind of look at it, the point that you mentioned around Gal's best sort of clean vocal performance and really coming into his own. I kind of look at this album as a bit of a journey through that, and him stepping into that confidence. So I think maybe that's why it works for me. And also that, you mentioned that the black metal vocals, and that's probably typically how I've associated him, through like Ad Majorum or even some of the stuff he did on Destroyer, I think was when he first sort of appeared doing vocals for Gorgoroth. So I've always struggled to sort of shake that picture out of my head. I listen to early Trolldom stuff as well, similar things. So that's always been my image. So to see him evolve more facets, it's been really good. But then I also like a novel use of things. So if you look at the single, which was Time and Timeless Timeline, the riffs in that are ones that Satyricon probably wish they put out in their last couple of albums, like just banging, catchy black metal riffs, and being able to apply his clean vocals in that and still make that track effective. I think highlights just very good songwriting.
Agree. He is one of the only frontmen that would be able to pull off writing a record that really does feel like black metal to its core without using a single scream at any point during the album. Which kind of speaks to the fact that black metal is about a feeling as much as it is about actual musical style, notes, vocal style, etc. I will, by the way, never get over the fact that he didn't like the wine that I that I brought him when I met him in Norway. I was at that winery in when I was on holiday in December, and I was enjoying. So when I saw him, I brought him. If you kind of take it from their flagship down, I actually brought him like you could do this tasting there called the Iconic 3. And the first one you get is the one that I gave him, and then the next one you get is like their second to flagship, and then you get the flagship. So I mean, I didn't bring him bullshit. That was the thing that I also was like, when he didn't like it, I was like, holy fuck, are people going to watch this and think like I got him some cheap bullshit out of Tesco or something like that? It's not.
I think it's very much a style thing, right? Too. So like, like for example, Merlot, I'm not really a fan of. So even if you got me a good one, I'm probably going to, throw it in my cooking and maybe not really enjoy drinking it. So like some of it's style too. So if you've got like a Cab Sav or something, it's a bit heavier and he prefers a lighter one, it doesn't matter how good it is, right? So.
Yeah, no, that I mean, he did reveal on the day that he's a Pinot Noir man, which I can take or leave Pinot Noir. I like Cab Sav, but I also concede that South African Cab Sav, like I said to him at the time, it has all the subtlety of a fucking kick in the face. So, but that's partly why I like it. Okay, finally, we get to number 21 on my list. Jade, Mysteries of a Flowery Dream, released by Pulverized Records on May the 9th. An album I'd almost forgotten about, and when I was finalizing my list, I did a shuffle of kind of because I also have, in addition to the actual final top 30, I had a contenders list. I was listening through some stuff on my contenders list, and a track called Shores of Otherness, which we'll listen to in a second, came up in the shuffle, and I was like, holy shit, how did I forget about this? This is fucking brilliant. I said at the time of their debut album, The Pacification of Death, that this is a kind of band that I would recommend to somebody who likes, or certainly liked, the earlier style death metal that Septic Flesh was making, and kind of tapped out when they got a little bit too slick. I would say Mysteries of a Flowery Dream is even more so, but actually, they have added a little bit more of the abrasiveness, a little bit more of the aggression. There's even a bit of black metal in here, while still retaining everything that was good about The Pacification of Death. Again, of course, I had Juan from Jade on the podcast. Tremendous guy. I think a great ambassador for Spanish extreme music, and just a superb sophomore effort. I think well deserving of its inclusion on this list.
Yeah, it was a good record. I haven't spent as much time with. I've brought it and I've listened to it a few times, but probably not a lot of time on it. But it's an interesting one in that I think there's a lot of things for its target audience. There's a lot of things in there that almost try and put you off listening to it, if that makes sense. So, I mean, Jade doesn't strike you as an immediately black doom metal, death metal sort of name. And then the cover,
nor does the album title, Mysteries of a Flowery Dream.
Mysteries of a Flowery Dream. And then you look at the cover and there's like a giant spider on there. So collectively, it kind of might throw you off the scent of what is actually a pretty good record. So what I would say is if you have been caught by those traps, get over it, listen to it. The album is actually very good, and you'll find a lot to enjoy in it.
Yeah, agree. All right. Like I said, we are going to have a quick musical interlude before we get to the main event. So for your listening pleasure, friends, this is The Shores of Otherness by Jade. That was The Shores of Otherness by Jade, taken from their album Mysteries of a Flowery Dream, out on Pulverized Records. Once again, a reminder, I will post the playlist for this episode on intothenecrosphere.com. So if you were flummoxed, as some people potentially do or as I've had feedback some people do get by our accents and couldn't understand what we were, what some of these band names are, you'll be able to go onto intothenecrosphere.com and check out all of the bands, all of the albums that we featured in our discussion today. I'm going to hand over to you, young man. What is your number 10?
Okay, so in typical fashion, these are just the 10 that spoke to me, depending on which day. Anyone could be number 1 and the other one could be number 10. Orders don't matter so much as what speaks to you, so I'll ruin the numerical thing. Sorry if you've got OCD, but it's how it is. And actually, before we start, I might drop a huge bombshell. This is going to be scandalous. People are going to be up in arms. It'll be all over the Sun and any other news rag you care to know. Sea Mosquito did put an album out this year. It's not in the top 10. I just want to set the tone. I know
shocking.
People be
that is a shocker.
I know.
I had seen that they put out an album and kind of assumed that you would have it in there. Very, very well reviewed. 95% on Metal Archive. And for anyone who cares, it's called Majestus.
Yes, very good album, and you should definitely check it out. So, but I just wanted to set the tone and maybe a little bit of anticipation of what 10 mighty titles
now fucking all bets are off.
could kick the king from its throne. Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's start from the top. So the first one I had on my list was Primitive Man Observance. Big fan of this band. Yeah, we've played with them and got along really well. Like Ethan's someone that I keep in contact with and have sort of used to do various bits of artwork, both for Graveir and Longing More. There's just people you meet that you enjoy spending time with, and just instantly sort of make that connection with. And here's a perfect example of that. So, yeah, as far as this album goes, a friend of mine described it to me. They're like, I just put it on, lay on the floor, and just like sunk into oblivion for its runtime. And it is a lengthy album, about an hour and 8 minutes, I think. But they're well known for basically the soundtrack of a bad time. You don't listen to it to enjoy yourself. You listen to it because you feel bad and you want to feel worse. So look, if you're going in expecting anything other than crushing doom, you're going to be very disappointed. But if you're there for it and you want to have a bad time, you will. I think what's different on this record is that they do actually, this album in some senses is their most crushing. Not because it is the most intense, but because it actually lets little bits of, it takes its foot off the gas every now and then, just to let you have a little bit of breathing space before it drops pressure back down on you. Even, Social Contract, the single is a huge song, fantastic. But I think the other single, Natural Law, ends with an acoustic guitar comes in, and there's, little bits of mournful sort of guitar leads or a little bit of electronics work that gives it a little bit some additional elements that add to their sound without noticeably changing it. But I think those subtle shifts actually result in a big difference. So yeah, I was a big fan of this, but it won't be for everyone, I will say that. So if you're not on board with Primitive Man, you probably never will be.
Unfortunately, I fall into that camp. I listened to Social Contract on the news rant. Was quite excited about it off the fact that a lot of people whose opinion I respect greatly, including yours, really like the band. Wasn't feeling it. Now, I may very well change my mind at some point, go back, listen to it, and go, actually, old Nathan's got a point here, but it just didn't land in fertile soil for me.
Yeah, probably a terrible band for News Rant because long songs and they take a while to build and take you places. So yeah, while you're trying to take a short listen, not good. But I've also spoken to Simon who runs Black and Records, a local store, fantastic local store with us, and I recommended. He's like, this, I can't, like, I put it on and I deal with it because it's so oppressive and horrible. Like I need a wet wipe after I'm done. I was like, yeah, that's exactly why I like it. So,
Yeah.
but I understand.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next one. Now, no, we're not doing it at we're not doing it in order, but I'm going to say number 9 anyway, just to keep me grounded, so I know where we're at. So number 9.
Yep. All good. So yeah, keeping on the track of things that are pretty filthy. The next one up was Tombs, Feral Darkness. Excellent record. Like this was very, very. I've been a fan of Tombs since like Winter Hours, but I was probably at the time a little bit too young to appreciate what I was listening to. But as I've gotten older and as I've followed the course of their albums, I've really grown to appreciate them a lot more and be a fan of their work. I actually messaged Mike after I had listened to this. I was like, dude, this album was really fantastic. They really leaned into the production. It's got a very filthy, just grimy production to it that really works for it. I think on this album they've leaned a lot more into the death metal elements, more into the extreme metal parts. There's definitely black metal parts in there too. They've leaned. I guess the early records are a little bit more sort of post rock, maybe a bit of that sort of goth and other bits and pieces, and more of a punk sound. And they've always had bits of extreme metal in there, but they've really dived into it on this record. And I just think the blend of everything is awesome. And Mike's vocals on the record as well. Just I think he's probably at the peak of his powers. He just sounds just foaming and pissed off, and I'm here for it. Really fantastic record. A big fan, and hopefully they'll get they'll get all the credit they deserve, because as far as records for this year goes, I was a massive fan of the song.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm very glad that they found a new home at Redefining Darkness Records. No offense to Season of Mist, but I feel like Redefining Darkness is a better fit for them. I'll probably throw the caveat in here that when you do top 10s with people, and we'll have the same with the Reverend Carl Hikara next week, some of these are definitely going to feature at elsewhere on my list. So I'm not gonna say all the things that I would typically say about a record, and there may be a couple that I'm going to have to do that on with your list, because I'm sure there's overlap. But I totally agree. For me, this is one of the best albums that Tombs has ever released. Everything I've ever loved about the band is really amplified on this album. I mentioned that it felt to me like, in many ways, some of what he had tried to achieve with the Grand Annihilation, he's gone back to and really nailed it. But then, to your point, there's also a lot more extremity here. Certainly, a lot more extremity than the initial singles suggested. But when that extremity is delivered, it's delivered in a way that's memorable. It's it's catchy, and I think the thing that I've always truly appreciated about Tombs, and it is not absent here, is the fact that they sound exceptionally unique. There is no band that sounds like Tombs. It's Mike straight away. From a riff style that it's his work immediately. It's not easy to retain that sort of identity in a music scene that is as crowded as the scene that we're into. And I feel like Tombs occupies their own space, their own sound, their own signature, which to me is commendable. One of the reasons why I love them so much. So great inclusion.
Yeah, and look, I hope they sort of keep exploring that little pocket of the death metal, influences, because it seems to work really well for them. So I'll be keen to see where they go with the next album. But it's Tombs, could go anywhere. That's the joy of it.
100%. Okay, number 8.
Yep. So this next one, this was a mainstay. This never really left. So the next one is Prescription, Desolate Divine. The production on this album is fantastic. Everything's just dialed to just kill everything. I don't know how to say it. It's just the songwriting is tight. All the tones on the Dave Otero's production job on this just really, it's a thing of the material being strong to begin with, and then the production really doing everything it can to accentuate that. It's heavy, it's nasty, it is polished, but that polish it's like when you've, cleaned off your machete and about to cut someone's head off. It's not in the teeth. It's sharpening the teeth. So I enjoyed their previous work, but I think again, this is them. It's probably the best thing they've done. And probably the most, if I was to pick a nominal number one, this is probably it.
Yeah, I again overlap. Won't say exactly where they land, but this is another knock out of the park by Dark Descent Records. Has all the ferocity of, has everything, every element I love about Finnish black metal, tied up into a band that also has its feet firmly planted, or at least 1 foot firmly planted in old school death metal. So you've got brutality, darkness, and to your point, it's just completely unrelenting from start to finish. Like I feel like this is the kind of record where, and I've spoken about this many times before, but I think it bears repeating here. When a fucking poser like Nurgle from Behemoth turns around and says that there's nothing good coming out and everything's already been done, don't start a band, etc., then I look at a band like this and I go, okay, well, why are you not doing music that sounds like this? Why are these guys, in some ways, taking you on at your own game and absolutely mopping the floor with you? So, yeah, I mean, no surprise that this band has gotten a lot of love from, many quarters of the Legion. They absolutely deserve it. It's a fucking phenomenal record. All right, number 7.
All right, here's where we get a little bit off the beaten path, so it's just going to get weirder from here, but that's okay.
The new Nora Jones album.
Yeah, that's it. Not quite that weird, but let's see. So the next one is from an Australian band called Leaker. Wearing their shirt right now. And the record's called Happy Hour. So, Jackie, I know I've mentioned this band to you before, local Brisbane band. If you're a fan of bands like Chatpile, Ken Mode, Unsane, or even older noise rock bands like Jesus Lizard and things like that, this will be up your alley. Again, it's very angular riffing. The guys listen to a bit of French black metal, so some of that sort of sneaks its way into some of the riffing patterns as well, and vocally also, they take elements from the intensity of hardcore and mix it all together. So just intensely heavy live. Great performers. Every show is fantastic. We put them on the Essence lineup, and again, if you're just into death metal and black metal, this is going to be a bit of a weird left-hand turn, but it's intense and extreme enough where there'll be something that you can enjoy out of it. And I think the crowd were suitably impressed with it. I would have loved to have put this out on our label, and I did offer, but similar to Black Braid, as you mentioned earlier, they wanted to do their own thing, fully support that. So if they're willing to do it, I'm willing to help them with any advice or anything that they've needed on the way. And if chat and they find it's their thing, and again, if you are into bands like Chatpile or Ken Mode, and you like that sort of intense, hardcore inflected noise rock, with a dose of like acidic Australian humor, you're going to find a lot to enjoy in this record. So yeah, bit of a left-hand turn there, but maybe hidden gem for some people, for a band that I think are on the up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I completely agree with you with the Ken Mode comparisons. It's a record that as soon as I heard it, I was like, yeah, you can hear these guys are from Australia. It's always that off-axis approach to songwriting that the very best Australian bands deploy. They have that, like you say, the influences are quite. It's quite easy to see the influences or spot the influences as you're listening to it, but it is just done in such a way that you're like, I've not heard it done quite like that before, and it works as a result. So yeah, great inclusion. Okay, at number 6.
So at number 6, I've got. Look, this is. I got to speak. These are my friends from a very long time. So there's an element. Well, there's not really an element of bias actually, because if I took that out of it, I would still think the same thing. So it's the new Pestilential Shadows album, Wretch. Devil's Hammer, when they released it, was also in my top 10. I've sort of been on the journey with this band through the whole course of their career, and I have a journey of the songwriting and where they've sort of gone with it, and you know, the last few albums, I keep thinking they've hit their peak, and I don't know where else they can sort of go from there, but always seem to just keep finding another level. You know, Ballum's like in my opinion, a very masterful songwriter. Live, they're fantastic. They're a world class band. You watch them live, and you know, you can see that that conviction comes through in everything that they do. But you know, there's tracks here. The way that they'll have a very long drawn out sort of riff that goes for a long time and fits in a lot of notes, is melodically quite complex, but doesn't lose the aggression or the intensity or the atmosphere. Just some really clever stuff, really well constructed, and it's just classic black metal, right? So, but done by people who've been doing it for a long time and only seem to keep finding new ways to improve on it. So yeah, I don't have too much more to comment on there, but yeah, I'm always impressed. So, and this is no exception. So I'm curious to see where the ceiling is.
I think you raise an interesting point about rating the releases done by your friends, and you know, I consider, as I go through this list now, just look, you know, scanning over my list. I mean, there's a fair few bands on there that at least feature members that I consider friends or friendly acquaintances. And it's hard sometimes because you never want to appear disingenuous or like you are favoring a mate or you're biased or whatever the case may be. But I do go to lengths to tell people, because they're my friends, I'm actually more critical of the music that they make, because one, I know the ins and outs of how that music gets produced, but two, you know, specifically because I never want to give somebody who's unworthy recognition and praise. You know, I'm maybe a little harder on the stuff that they do than I would be for anybody else. So yeah, and I'm saying that to clarify, because, you know, again, like I said, there's going to be a couple of bands that, you know, feature on my list that have people in them that I consider to be, you know, either friends or friendly acquaintances, and you know, it's not like I'm trying to justify myself here, but just lest anybody think otherwise. They're not in there for any other reason than they're fucking good. And frankly, in my scenario, being, you know, doing this podcast, many of these people I met doing the podcast, I would never have invited them to the show in the first place had I not enjoyed what they do musically.
Yeah, and look, I think it's also hard, you know, being in a band in a place like Australia where the scene's not massive. Oftentimes they're people that you know anyway, right? So, but I will say, yeah, there's albums they've done that haven't made the top 10, but you know, Devil's Hammer. And I was happy to be able to sort of include them on the list because the albums are that good. So you could easily go back to any of the other ones prior to that, and you'll get fantastic records. That's not the issue. But yeah, you have to take a bit of a step back and try and look at things objectively. But yeah, doing that, their last couple of records have been stellar. So.
By the same token, also, when a homie delivers a record that you like, holy fuck, that's great. I mean, there's no better feeling to me than you know, seeing or hearing a friend really succeed at something that you know they've put their heart and soul into. You know, and you know, I feel incredibly fortunate that I'm friends with people that are that talented. So, okay, you're number 5.
So number 5 is this was I'd never heard that this is a first as well. So I'm happy there's a few first albums on here. I always like that when there's some new bands that I haven't heard.
Metallica, kill them all.
Yeah. It means to me it's a bit of a sign of health, right? So you don't want to be rating the same 10 bands all the time. So this band, Graveir from Finland, and the album's called Vermilion Death. look, it's pretty straightforward, HM2 style death metal with a bit of a punky vibe. But what I really enjoy, the album's just so fun. It's just fun. It's just riff central, head down, dirty fun. And yeah, there's often times through 2025 where I'm like, I just wanted to listen to something and enjoy myself. And this album did that for me. Yeah, it's funny when you try and work out what your top 10 are, because there's things on paper where you'd be like, look, if I look at, how technical and how well written something was, objectively you could say this album's better right on paper, but why have you gone with something a bit more straightforward and straight ahead? And it's like, well, I kept listening to that one. It was fun. I enjoyed it. When I put it on, I felt good. I felt like I wanted to party. I felt like I should get a HM2 out and play some riffs. So there's something to be said about that. So yeah, for that reason, this record's made it on there. So yeah, if you want something to enjoy, not think about too hard, and just get into it, this is a good candidate.
Yeah, I know you shared this with me, and it was not a band that I had a chance to check out, unfortunately. But interesting what you say about them being a new band. I mean, literally, first proper release that they've put out. They didn't put out an EP. They didn't put out a demo. They were founded in 2024, and none of the guys in the band, with the exception of the vocalist, actually looks like they do anything else, at least not anymore. So Mika Kunanen, he's in a band called Lake Vanda that do sludge metal, but that's it. They are genuinely, a bunch of young bucks. One thing I'm quite curious about is, obviously, we've had the sons or the spawn of other people on the people who've had parents that play in the extreme music scene. It's going to be interesting to see with a lot of these bands, when their kids start to come of age, and they start to form their own bands, what comes from it. I don't know whether, I guess there's a debate there as to whether talent is hereditary. But I mean, certainly when you're around that and you're around so many top musicians, there's no reason why you're not going to pick up something like that, as we had with Sarkator. But yeah, Graveir, not a band that I paid any attention to, unfortunately, but I definitely will add that to the list to do. Okay, we are now up to your number 4, I believe.
Yes, this next one's actually a label release, so I'll call that out as well, and also a friend's band at the same time. But look, they finally put out an album, so I can include them on the list. So that's the new Hebephrenic album, Decathexis. So for the record, two members of Graveir are also in this band. But that aside, their EP was fantastic, and if it had been an album, that would have been on the list. I think at the time I'd sort of described it as if someone had taken Grand Declaration of War and not made some of the some of the
questionable decisions.
Yes, yeah. So this album stretches things a bit further and leans more into some of the atmospheric or more progressive territory, but it still retains its teeth. And it already had plenty of them to begin with. I mean, Chris's vocal performance is suitably unhinged. But Jack's a fantastic songwriter and a very talented guy. So they've been able to stretch that across an album length. Very intricate compositions going on. It is technical, but it's, again, never losing sight of the fact that it's songs, that it needs to take you on a journey and tell a story. And look, I find that with, not to big note him, but one of the things I enjoy about Chris as a drummer as well is he's always thinking about what is good for the song, trying things, playing at the outer perimeter of his ability at times to come up with something and be creative. And I think as a vocalist he kind of does the same thing in terms of how he thinks about how he structures his vocals and where peaks and valleys should be, and not being afraid to try stuff. So yeah, that that tends to marry well with, the very technical background that the rest of the band provides. They kind of balance each other out, and I think the result of it is a really excellent record. And this one probably picked C Mosquito for that, that style of uneasy, uncomfortable, but sort of progressive albums. So sorry, C Mosquito, but yeah, this pipped that spot.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. Excellent record. And if memory serves me correctly, we did a premiere on the Sphere for Visions of Magdalene.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, which landed very, very well. If I think about the songs that we premiered last year that got the best response, I think Ibiphrenic were definitely in the upper echelons of that list, where people heard it and they're like, "Oh fuck, this is a great band. I need to check them out." But yeah, totally agree with you. Superb album. I think Chris is a great guy first and foremost. Superb drummer, and it is cool that his creativity and his thoughtfulness has translated into him being a great frontman as well. So if anybody hasn't heard that album yet, I strongly recommend it. So your number 3.
So number 3 is Scour Gold. Yeah, this was an excellent record. It's black metal through and through.
Are you promoting white supremacy on this podcast,
mate? I'm promoting gold supremacy because this album is top notch. To quote someone. So it's interesting, I think, with Scour. If I was to be hypercritical, you could go, look, the riffs aren't necessarily doing anything super exciting. You've maybe heard some of it. But I think the thing that makes it all work is that it's a very American form of black metal, similar to, if I look back, Pantera and Metallica were like the two big bands back in the day at school that you're either into one or the other, and they were your favorite band. And I always found Metallica was it's a bit like a Rolls Royce, right? There'll be 16 bars of solo, and it all needs to be intricate and using, the right Baroque key. And they'll have these sprawling epics where, Pantera with a muscle car, right? Anything that couldn't be said in 4 bars wasn't worth saying. And it was just all, and this, in some ways, this is that, but put into black metal. It's black metal that's founded on gasoline and raw power, and I think that's what makes it work. It gives it an evilness. If you're listening to I can't remember the name of the track now. I don't want to get it wrong, so I'll make sure I get it right. Yeah, Invoke. That's what it was. I was going to say Invocation. Invoke, where he's like, give the body to Satan, and he's doing that sort of chanting. You make that face that Phil makes when you hear it. Like, it's just the intensity that he brought as a front man, and for a guy who's like 60, right? And you could compare it to maybe, say, Dark Angel, the new Dark Angel. The guy's like about the similar age. Like, his voice is in pretty good shape. Phil, he's pretty switched on, and he still sounds pissed off and still gives that intensity that made Pantera, a big part of why they were popular. But he's enjoying himself, and you just start making the face with him. You can just see him doing it, and you go along for the ride. And the music's like muscular enough and aggressive enough that the backing for it is like just dials everything. As I said, it's just black metal in just being fed diesel fuel, and he's just all power.
So another one where there's definite overlap. My most listened to record last year, according to my Spotify Wrapped, although actually it's second to another one, but I had that album sent to me by the band in question at the start of the year. But I mean, Scour, I can't count how many times I did listen to the album. Infusorium, the track and the lead single. I think the Spotify Wrapped count was 264 times that I listened to that song last year. I totally agree with you. You know, it takes everything that's cool about mid '90s black metal, and it adds so much testosterone to it that sometimes it's almost laughable. You know, like if you think about that. That track that you just referenced, Invoke. While you were talking about it, actually, I was looking at the track listing, and I was like, is he going to say Infusorium or is he going to say Invoke? And I thought like a Devil is maybe one that's like a possible third. But every fucking song, it just has these moments where you're like, you just burst out laughing because it's so fucking intense and so unapologetic for what it sets out to do. This is not black metal that is there to make people feel warm and fuzzy and included. I'll put it that way. It's music. It's there to fucking smash your face in. And I totally agree with you on your take on Phil too. You can hear he loves what he's doing. He's 57, by the way. He's not 60. But at 57, to deliver a vocal performance this aggressive and this fucking mean, that takes some doing. So
yeah, I was going to say throughout the 60 number, because I know it's like, if I look at the new Dark Angel record, I think the singer from Dark Angel is about 60. So they're close in age range. And I guess the point was that, Dark Angel sounds a little bit shop worn for the age. Like he's showing his age a lot more than Phil, who's maybe only a couple of years behind, who sounds like, yeah. And what he's doing is like very, very intense. So that the 60 was kind of like splitting the difference between the two.
Yeah. Well, no doubt I'm going to be talking an awful lot more about this album at some point in the next few episodes, but superb inclusion. And again, there's people that sneer at Phil and sneer at the band. And I remember when they first put this out, people were posting all sorts of stupid comments on the Nuclear Blast's Instagram. Some of them probably still there. I see we're supporting white supremacists now. I mean, shut the fuck up. A guy did something in 2016, apologized, hasn't done anything like that ever since. I mean, Jesus, and get fucking over it. And if you don't get over it, it's probably a good chance you don't listen to this podcast. And if you are listening to it and still cry yourself to sleep over Phil, probably best you hit the bricks. So over to you for your number 2.
Yeah, so for number 2, I've got the new Bloodhouse Nord record, Ethereal Horizons. Yeah, massive fan of this. Really big fan of it. Like the clean vocal parts in it are excellent. The melody lines in it are excellent. I mean, look, Binsval's a excellent song. I keep going back to songwriting, but that's always the thing that I listen out for. And I guess it was more following a through line of something like Hallucinogen versus like the Undreamable Abyss stuff. I like part 1 of those records, but the second one kind of went in and out. I didn't really retain it, and I think because I really liked the first one, and the second one was kind of different. Disharmonium Nahab just kind of one ear out the other. It didn't work for me as well as Undreamable Abysses, which I think was on my top 10 for that year. But then, again, in typical Bloodhouse Nord fashion, along comes the next album, and it's calling back to something totally different. Yeah, look, it's just, again, really epic sort of songs without sounding, I guess, overblown or overdone. Again, just masterful songwriting, very tasteful, knows when to back off of stuff, knows when to push further into it, and culmination of someone who really knows what they're doing. And again, I guess maybe because I wasn't so keen on the last album, maybe I shouldn't say high to their powers, but for me, it's a very big comeback from that Nahab album, which didn't really work for me.
Overlap once again. Won't say exactly where. All I'll say is I think Ethereal Horizons is a masterpiece, and I think Vince Vaughn is one of the true masters of black metal, particularly when it comes to songwriting. And he's been around for a long time. The fact that he's able to put out music at the pace that he puts out music and then still produce something like this is absolutely incredible. And I don't know whether it was you and I that listened to Shadows Breathe first on the news rant, but I just remember hearing the song, being impressed, and then hearing the chorus, and I was like, holy fuck. Anyway, I'm gonna stop talking there. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. What a record, and in the canon of Bluthaus Nord, probably one of my favorites ever.
Agreed.
Okay, let's quickly recap, and then we'll let you do your number one. So we had Primitive Man with Observance. We had Tombs with Feral Darkness. We had Prescription with Desolate Divine. We had Leaker with Happy Hour. We had Pestilential Shadows with Wretch. Grave Hex with Vermian Death. Hebephrenic with Decathexis. Scour with Gold. Bluthaus Nord with Ethereal Horizons, and Sir, I would say lineal number one, but your final pick in your top 10.
Yep. And I'll be surprised if this is on your list. I'll be very surprised. This was the last minute swap out that I picked up from, like, oh, I missed this, and I went back and it was just that good that it made it in. So and this also, I believe, is a debut album. So also from a Finnish band. So the record in question is Poisoner, and the album is called Night Metal. Yeah.
That is not on my list, and is not a band that I paid any attention to at all.
Neither did I. And then it came up on a list when I was going through. Well, that looks interesting. And then I put it on the car. And I think after it was all done, I picked my jaw up off the floor and was like, did I hear what I thought I heard? And I listened to it again and again and again and again and again. And I was like, no, I did. So it's look, it's black thrash with a big healthy dose of like traditional, trad heavy metal, rock and roll. But unlike something, often my issue with bands that are trying to blend black metal with elements of traditional heavy metal or rock. So bands like Night or Tribulation is often they add those elements to maybe like soften down the black metal parts. Whereas this Poisoner have taken a different approach where they've used that to just give themselves a massive set of brass balls and use that rock to give the music a swagger where they're about to teabag you with them. And there's some weird sort of keyboard parts going on there, and the vocals are what really ram it home. They're very reminiscent of Doldrum, and if you remember that Doldrum, The Knocking was one of my favorite albums that year. For that year, I'm a big fan of it. Look, urban legend has it that if you type Pornhub into my browser, Doldrum The Knocking just comes up and plays on a loop for 3 hours, but can neither confirm nor deny. But the vocals are very similar to that. It doesn't have that Vedbjorn's and weirdness like Doldrum. It's just straight ahead black thrash, but it's tight. The riffs are fantastic. The songs are fantastic. It's like being at a house party when everyone's a knife-wielding maniac. You're going to have the best bad time ever. It's like, yeah, this album is and party all at the same time, and I was very much here for
it. Amongst my most listened to albums last year, Daiva's Through Sheer Will and Black Magic that came out back in 2022 is still up there. Black thrash for me is a style that very often does not get done well, but on the rare occasion that it gets pulled off by true masters, it is fucking brilliant. It's probably my favorite style. So yeah, Poisoner I will definitely add to the list. And as a reminder, if you haven't listened to Through Sheer Will and Black Magic in a while or at all, fucking go back to it immediately. It is absolutely sensational. They will hopefully be putting out a new album this year as well. But yeah, there you go. Nathan Glover's top 10, my numbers 30 through 21. Nathan, it has been a pleasure having you on as always. We need to do a news rant probably relatively soon again, and we can catch up about all sorts of other shit as well, including I want to know more about what's going on with Gutterbridge Cabal with the label. We can talk a bit of MMA, talk some other trash. But it is always a huge pleasure having you on.
And look, likewise, always happy to catch up and always privileged to be asked to come on. So, the answer is always a standing yes for any appearance. It's good to catch up.
Awesome. I'm going to let you select the song off the Poisoner record that we will play out with. What do you want us to go with?
Oh, Poisoner. So I would probably go with Words of Power.
All right. So off Night Metal, the band is Poisoner. The album was released on April the 10th, 2025, and this is Words of Power. Nathan, thank you very much for your time. And I'll see you guys straight after for the weekly news rant. Words of Power is the name of that track. The band is Poisoner, and the album from whence it was taken, Night Metal, featuring very prominently on Nathan Glover's Top 10 of 2025. Certainly hope you guys enjoyed our discussion and our lists. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what your favorite albums were for 2025. And make sure to be back here again next week, because I'm going to be continuing my countdown alongside my co-conspirator, the Reverend Carl Hikara. He's going to be sharing his top 10. I'm going to be counting down from number 20 to 11. You can also head to intothenecrosphere.com, just in case the uber masculine accents that Nathan and I have, thanks to our shared Southern Hemisphere heritage, threw you for a loop. There'll be an episode 301 playlist on intothenecrosphere.com. You can check out songs taken from all the albums that he and I discussed. Massive thank you to Nathan for his time and for being part of this countdown, as is now our tradition. And like I said, hope you guys are going to be back here again next week for the next one. Don't go anywhere, though, because we've got us a weekly news rant coming up right after this. First up, though, I need to give a public service announcement. If you're one of those sniveling Weasley scumbags who cut in line at the airport and then pretend like you don't know how to speak English, or you don't know how queues work when the people behind you get a little agitated, then it's time for you to hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
A roundabout for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, my friends, as always, we kick off on metalstorm.net, the finest metal news website in all the land. I'm recording this on a very dark, very dank, and very fucking cold Monday morning around 6:15 a.m. So if I'm a little more bleary-eyed than usual, then that is why. But the first headline grabbing my attention this week, Immolation has a new album coming out in April. It says here, New York death metal veterans Immolation have announced details of their forthcoming 12th studio album, Descent, set for release on April the 10th via Nuclear Blast Records. The band also unveiled their first lead single coming off the record, entitled Adversary, offering the first taste of the new material. Let's hear what it sounds like. Let's pause it there because the song is only 3 minutes, 16 seconds. So, we're going to end up going through the whole thing at this rate. But that would be time well spent because that song is fucking fantastic. I was just sitting thinking about this as I was listening to that track. In 2 years' time, Immolation are going to be celebrating their 40th anniversary, which is just absolutely mind-blowing to me. And across the 40 years or the 38 years that they have been active, the question that I would pose is, have they ever missed a step on any album? I mean, even if you look at the albums that they put out that, at the time weren't necessarily as well received, or if you think, if I look at Metal Archives as an example, Kingdom of Conspiracy, that only has 7, or that's their lowest reviewed record, and it only has a 74% rating, which for them is piss poor. Yet we look at the tracks that are on Kingdom of Conspiracy, and one of my favorite Immolation songs ever put out, All That Awaits Us, is the last song on that album. I actually think that album is fucking amazing. So 74%, I mean, whoever is responsible for bringing that score down is a fucking imbecile. They just haven't ever put out a bad album. And you can start at Dawn of Possession, which is an album I still go back to today. Year in After, great record. Failures for Gods, excellent. Close to a World Below, they literally went from Gear 5 to Gear 7 and, just kept on improving and kept on getting better. And it's kind of been the case with every successive release up to and including Acts of God that they put out back in 2022. Descent to me just sounds like more of the same, but in the best possible way. A lot of bands when they do, when you say more of the same, it's not necessarily meant as a compliment, but in this instance, goddamn, it just sounds fucking incredible from start to finish. Love the riffing, love the production. The performances are absolutely top notch. There's nothing to fault about it. And it's amazing to me that after so many albums and after so many years, these guys just keep on doing it. Or keep on operating at the very highest of levels. Think of any band from their era. And I should say any death metal band from their era. And is there anyone that performs like these guys do? I don't think so. Ross Dolan on that song. I mean, how fucking angry and powerful does he sound? It's like the guy's vocals just keep getting better and better. And he is now 56 years old. So, yeah, I mean, I could keep going on about this probably for the next hour. We could fill up the entire news rant with me talking about how much I love Immolation, but that gets a beyond top notch. And what a way to start off the year. When I saw they announced that the new album was coming out, I actually kind of felt like, oh, this is, relatively early for them, but not quite. I can't actually believe that it's been 4 years since Acts of God came out. And the one prior to that, Atonement, that was 2017. So that was a 5-year break. And that was the longest that they've taken between albums. But anyway, I'm here for this new record. Hopefully, we will be able to get Ross either back on the podcast or I'll get to talk to Robert Figner. But yeah, let's see what happens. In the meantime, this is just fucking fantastic. If you don't like this, I honestly don't know what you're doing listening to metal in 2026. I mean, this is as good as death metal gets. No question about it. All right. Moving along, my friends. And I've got a lot of questions that were sent in by the Legion over the weekend as well. So I might actually jump into one of them. Shemak MCC2 has asked me, what are your favorite metal and non-metal related books? So favorite metal book, probably by quite a significant distance, is Dale Patterson's Black Metal Evolution of the Cult. I think there's so many books that have been written on black metal, and there's so many books that have been, so many autobiographies and things like that. But I think Black Metal Evolution of the Cult, what I really like about it is it's clearly written by a fan, but it's written with a degree of respect and I think a degree of reverence for the subject matter that I think just elevates the book. and it's written in a way that also is very clever. Like, let me contrast it with something that I read over the weekend. Not over the weekend, I should say over the holiday. So I read the Jon Nodveit autobiography while I was away on vacation, and I have to say it was a challenging read. I mean, for one, the book itself is not very good in my view. I mean, it's written very poorly. The author continually says, he'll make a point and he'll say, "Oh, we'll get back to that later." In some cases, he never gets back to it at all, and then in other cases, it's almost like he'll say, "We'll get back to that later." Then the next 5 pages in, he mentions it again, and it's like, "Oh, we'll get back to that later," though. It's written a very kind of haphazard way. Also, and I don't know anyone who's read the book, mention in the comments what you think of it, but I felt like towards the back end of the book, he starts talking about about Jon Nodveit's murder case, and obviously, he was charged with luring into a trap a gay man and murdering him alongside one of his associates from his fucking satanic cult that he was part of. And the writer of Far Beyond All Light, which is the name of the book, actually goes into several paragraphs basically stumping for him, defending it. He actually at one point says he doesn't consider it a crime at all, and Jon Nodveit was a Satanist, and so therefore you should have expected this kind of behavior. So it's an interesting book, but it's not a very good book. So that aside, favorite music book, no question, Dial Patterson, Black Metal Evolution of the Cult. And then non-music book or non-metal book, there's a book called, I think it's called Who Fights Monsters. Let me just double check the name. It might be Whoever Fights Monsters or Who Fights Monsters. It's written by somebody named Robert Resler. So Robert Resler, if you've watched Mindhunter, which I think is the absolute. So it's called Whoever Fights Monsters. So Robert Resler is one of the characters that inspired the Netflix show Mindhunter. So if you've seen that, his fingerprint is all over that. He was one of the men responsible for innovating criminal profiling, and Whoever Fights Monsters is him talking specifically about his first-hand experiences of interviewing people like I think they got Manson in there, Ted Bundy, etc. Incredibly interesting. So that's one of my favorite books. And then one that maybe some will find surprising, but it really is, I personally think, one of the greatest books ever written, and that's Animal Farm by George Orwell. I've loved that book ever since I was young. I think it is extraordinarily well written. It is very funny. I love the way it's written. The use of language, I think, is incredibly smart and incredibly witty. So yeah, Animal Farm by George Orwell, Whoever Fights Monsters by Robert Resler. Those are my favorite non-metal books. So moving on to some music once again. Hell Ripper, new album out in March. I think we spoke about this at the back end of last year. Just before we get into the song, let me just say once again, when I saw Hell Ripper at Beyond the Gates last year, one thing that I just couldn't stop thinking is this dude has the potential to be absolutely fucking massive. He just had command of that stage and a charisma and a presence that, I mean, I don't know if it's over exaggeration to say the last time I saw something like that was when I saw Mastodon play to a half full room in like 2002 at the Camden Underworld. I mean, it genuinely was like at that level. So I'm very, very curious to see what this new album is going to be able to do for him. I mean, I personally think if it's not a massive roaring success, then Century Media are, they screwed the pooch a little bit on that. That's what I would say. Now, obviously, the music has to follow. First song that we heard off this record, I really liked. We're going to find out what this new single sounds like. It says here in the article, Scottish one-man blackened speed metal project Hell Ripper the solo endeavor of James McBain, released a new single titled Hunger Pressed. The track is taken from the forthcoming album Coronac, which is set for release on March the 27th via Century Media Records. Fun fact, March 27th is my birthday. So clearly, Hellripper are putting out this album as some sort of living tribute to yours truly. You can check out the music video featuring live footage filmed at Damnation 2025 below. Let's hear what it sounds like, my friends. Superb. They mentioned further down the article here that, or they describe Hellripper as a mixture of Creator, Merciless, Metallica, Watain, Rotting Christ, Tribulation. I would say Dissection is definitely a big influence here as well. But even though this style of music might not be my absolute favorite, I think all the elements come together perfectly here. Vocals sound great, really catchy riff, very well performed. And I'll tell you what, when they play this live, there is magic that happens, black magic. So if you haven't seen Hellripper yet, do make a point of catching them when they play. Let me know what you think, because I was not expecting to be as impressed as I ended up being when I saw them play in Beyond the Gates. Perhaps that's why my praise is so effusive. But I was absolutely blown away. By the way, you may hear some racket here in the background. That's the dog reminding me that I have shut the living room door, and apparently she doesn't abide by closed doors in the house. So let me just let her in, and then we can get back to it. Let's do another question, actually. And by the way, I've got some very good questions this week. So thank you very much to everybody for sending that in. So Griff_in_2 asks me, what are your top 10 albums that were released between 2020 and 2024? Excellent question. I had to go away and really think about this, because obviously I've done top 20s or top 30s of the year since the podcast started back in 2019. So, I've actually still have all those lists saved, but it's not as simple as going back and saying, well, the top two, of every year make up the first 8, and then, I get 2 freebies. So, actually not even the first 8. I think, 2020 through 2024 is 5 years. So, in some cases, there are records that I didn't have as my number one in that particular year that now I potentially would have. There's a couple where over time they've just really, really grown on me. Be that as it may, Here's the list as I came up with it yesterday after some deliberation. So at number 10, Werewolves Die for Us. At number 9, Panzerfaust, Sons of Perdition, Chapter 2. At number 8, Ultha, All That Has Never Been True. At number 7, Mystirming, Medhomri. At number 6, The Amenta, Revelator. At number 5, Utkana, Nex Fornix. At number 4, Primordial, How It Ends. At number 3, Ruim, Black Royal Spiritism. When I did the, and I think that was for 2023, when I did the best of, or top 30 albums of 2023, I know I was absolutely torn on which of those two were going to get the number one. It ended up being Primordial. I have to confess, as much as I still go back to Primordial, I go back to Ruim a little bit more often. So that's why there's a bit of been a swap there, change in the rankings. At number 2, Arcles, Melano. And at number 1, the Antichrist Imperium, Volume 3, Satan in His Original Glory. That I genuinely do think has been my favorite album of the last 5 years. It could potentially be one of my favorite albums since Acrococker put out Corazon, which is my all-time favorite album. And some may also ask why I don't have Oculus House of the Black Geminis in there, considering that it was my favorite album of last year. I did limit myself intentionally to only one album per band, so as to keep it fair. But yeah, that's my those are my top 10 albums released between 2020 and 2024. Let me know let me know what you guys have. Fate Unburied sign with Time to Kill Records and release a new single. It says here, Italian death / progressive metal band Fate Unburied have signed with Time to Kill Records. The deal covers the release of the band's second full-length album, Necrosphere, scheduled for release next autumn, October the 16th, 2026. Holy fuck, they're getting the old press cycle started for this one well in advance. To coincide with the announcement, the band have released a new single entitled Drain, the first track to be taken from Necrosphere. Let's hear what it sounds like. So, as this style of death metal goes, I surprisingly quite enjoy this. Normally, I enjoy my death metal to be a little bit more abrasive, a little bit more rough and tough. But I enjoy this, and I was sitting here thinking, why am I liking this more than in theory I should be liking it? And I have sussed why. It is thanks to the superb vocal performance by Ricardo Babylon. He sounds a little Mamelli-esque, Patrick Mamelli. For anybody that didn't catch the reference, for the three people listening that didn't catch the reference, but there's like a really cool rhythm, a really cool tempo to the way that he manages his vocals. He sounds super aggressive. But at the same time, there's just a natural groove to the way that he sings that I think really enhances the song. The performances are very good as well. I mean, would I call them progressive? I don't know. It's only, I mean, the song is only or just over 3 minutes long. I don't know whether that necessarily counts as progressive or, I mean, I might be wrong here, but progressive to me typically means, long ass songs, loads of long guitar sequences and, bit of fluting here and there as well from time to time. But yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think this is very cool. Not sure if it's top notch worthy, but gets a thumbs up, that's for sure. And Ricardo's vocals, fucking superb. I think anybody that's on the hunt for a vocalist, you probably want to, hit the man up in case he's got some spare time with his work with Fate Unburied. I saw that he's also a live guitarist for the Italian band Sadist. So I don't know, maybe that keeps him busy too. Anyway, another question. Let me cue one up here. The Krager's response. Well, actually, not the Krager's response. The Krager asks me, what are your 5 goals for 2026? So I've got, I'm assuming you're talking about personal goals. There's actually another one we'll get to straight after this where somebody asked me about my goals for the podcast. But personal goals, I need to lose a little bit of weight. Fortunately, I kept the damage to a minimum when I was in South Africa, and that is because Paige and I intentionally ate one big meal a day, had like fruit for the rest of it. So, stayed healthy, went to the gym. When you spend a lot of time in the ocean, as I did there, that's a fucking workout in itself, especially when you go out as deep as I did. So the holiday wasn't too damaging, but I would like to lose a bit of weight this year. I have some personal financial goals, specifically related to my pension, and also we want to extend our home. And then, obviously I'm going to need to pay for that. I've got a couple of personal career goals. And then in terms of just top line on the podcast, I would love to grow to 9,000 subscribers on YouTube, and ultimately just work on improving the quality of the show. Now, there was another question specifically around the goals for the podcast this year. That came from Frozen Swole. And so to expand on that, so firstly, I want to launch the merch store at some point in the next month or two. So here's my idea for the merch store, and you guys tell me what you think of that. So obviously I used to have the Teespring store. I shut that down, and I shut that down for 2 reasons. Number one, the price that they charge people is too high, I feel, for the quality of product. So that was one reason. Second reason is that I had feedback from a couple of members of the Legion that the quality you guys were getting in terms of not just service from Teespring, but, print coming off the shirts and shirts shrinking and all that sort of stuff, that was dog shit. So that's why I shut that down. So here's my plan right now. I want to do like a cycle where every probably 4 to 6 months, I launch a new design. That design will be, it'll be a design done by, a specific artist or, ideally a member of the Legion. And, we can do a little bit of a revenue split there. So if you guys are interested in doing it, let me know. There's not going to be a huge amount of revenue to be split, but, you can still be part of Into the Necrosphere history. But yeah, in a nutshell, I want to have like one design, limited edition, and then refresh the design every 4 to 6 months. I already have the design for the first one done. Cheyenne created it for me. Cheyenne from Trivax. Looks fucking cool. If you want to see what the design looked like or looks like, I actually had it. I think I've sort of flashed it at the very end of episode 300. So if you go on the video on YouTube, you can see it. I spoke with Centelia, who helped me create the Into the Necrosphere website, and she said that you can actually have the shirts printed and do like a number in the inner sticker or inner tag of the shirt. So I'm thinking like do maybe 150 to 200 shirts, have them numbered. Once they're sold out, they're done, and then we move on to the next design. And that's the plan as things stand right now. I will personally have them printed up. I will personally ship them. So you're not going to have any of the service issues that you had with Teespring, and I'm going to be able to sell it for cheaper as well. But that's the first goal: launch the merch store. I do want to upgrade the presentation of the podcast a little bit this year. I got quite a few new things last year, like new lights, and I got a new lens for my camera and stuff like that as well. But I think specifically for when I'm recording face-to-face interviews, so when I'm at festivals and stuff like that, I definitely want to make that look a little bit sharper. I want to do this year a couple of kind of non-episode type bits of content. So, give you an example. I've got the makings of a mini documentary about Trivax that we drove up to Birmingham to watch them rehearse for the Apsu tour that they did in December, and I filmed some interview footage with them. And I suddenly had this idea. Because originally I was just going to do it as like a half-hour interview video, and then I got this idea that actually I could turn this into like a mini documentary. I've got the whole thing mapped out in my mind. I just need to get the time to actually do it. But I'd love to do. I'll start with the Trivax documentary, and then maybe one or two other ideas that I've got bubbling away. And I'll just release that on the Into the Necrosphere YouTube channel, but definitely want to do that this year. And then in terms of guests I would really love to have on in 2026, Marduk. And I'm saying the guests that I think are a possibility because, to explain, Marduk are going to be at Beyond the Gates, so I'm definitely going to try and make that happen. Testament will also be at Beyond the Gates, so might finally be able to make that Chuck Billy interview happen, although I still think that's going to be a long shot. We know Akrakoka are definitely at Fortress Festival, and I'm definitely speaking to them. So that's already done. You guys are going to get to see an interview with Jason Mendonça and David Gray. And if you're at Fortress, we're probably going to do it as part of the Fortress Forum. So I'm gonna ask for some dispensation to do more than like a half an hour. I think it deserves at least 45 minutes to an hour. We'll do some audience Q&A and stuff like that. More to come nearer the time, but that's definitely happening. We've got Emperor playing at Beyond the Gates, so I would love, I mean, as I've said many times before, Samoth from Emperor is a musical hero of mine. I would love to somehow be able to meet him and interview him for the podcast. And then Old Man's Child, they're at Fortress Festival, so, hopefully I get to do something there. And Mayhem putting out a new album this year, so maybe I can get Attila back on the podcast, or I can get Necro Butcher or Ghoul, or maybe even Hellhammer, even though Hellhammer doesn't seem like the most talkative fellow. And then obviously earlier we were listening to Immolation, so I'd love to have Immolation back on the show as well. But yeah, those are the goals for Into the Necrosphere in 2026. And last year was just such a huge year as far as the guests I had on, the things that we were able to do at some of the festivals that we went to. So, you do kind of get to the beginning of the year and you go, how the fuck do I possibly top this? But we'll see what happens. And hopefully you, the Legion, will be with me for the duration. On to some more music, and we listen to a new track now by Archvile King. It says here, French black metalers Archvile King have shared a new track entitled Sepulture. This is part of their sophomore long player, Ohura des Perez. I'm sure I fucked that up. I made it sound more Spanish than French. But anyway, the album comes out on the 23rd of January. This was featured on Black Metal Promotions. So let's hear what it sounds like. All right, I've gone over, but the reason I've gone over is because that fucking introduction was seriously long in the tooth. When the song itself actually starts, though, it's not too bad. Very strong second wave black metal influences. Kind of reminds me of, countless bands that put out releases back in 1995 or 1996. Well produced, vocals sound cool. But it's that intro. I mean, he seems to clearly like it as well, because he goes back to it again about 60 seconds after the song has actually shifted gears. And it's not that I hate it, but I'm trying to explain this in the nicest and most pragmatic way I can think of. It's just not cool enough to spend, number one, 90 seconds, like a minute and a half, sort of doodling on the keyboard, repeating that melody to start the song, and then to go back to it again like 40 seconds later. In the news rant format, where I'm only listening to 2 to 2.5 minutes of every song, maybe that's just not the best platform for this. Kind of like when Nathan and I were talking about Primitive Man earlier. But we've heard some good stuff so far today, and I'm not sure that Archvile King is going to be one that I remember from this week's news rant. All right, another question. Tom.muir.02 asks me, what albums are you looking forward to this year, confirmed or otherwise? This is going to be a very, very busy year, and as luck would have it, I have actually already heard a number of albums that are coming out this year that, if you'd asked me last year, I would have said, yeah, definitely can't wait to hear this in 2026. But I've had a couple of people send me, early release material or stuff they've been doing in the studio. So some of what I'm about to say, I've actually heard already. But I'm going to say it anyway, just so it's on everybody's radar. Album I'm looking forward to most clearly, Mayhem, Liturgy of Death. I have not heard that yet in its entirety. I've just heard the 3 singles, but all 3 absolutely fantastic. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day and saying probably part of the reason why I love it so much is that the 3 singles sound like Nadinger. And I've been waiting for a new Nadinger album fucking ever. So the fact that, we're now hearing something similar, a similar style of black metal, but performed by members of Mayhem, I am definitely here for it. The new Faustian album, featuring, of course, the 3 gentlemen from Werewolves, that is going to be an absolute banger. So too, the 8th Werewolves record. I think it's album 8 coming out this year, but I'm always excited about that. Necrofire, Transcending into Oblivion. They've just signed, I think, to Metal Blade Records. I may or may not have heard this album, and I'm telling you right now, this is going to fucking blow people away. Immolation, Descent, spoke about that earlier. I'm looking forward to hearing the new Graveir. Weird Stuff, featuring Cheyenne from Trivax. I've been excited about that project ever since he told me about it. And I know that's going to be coming out on Apocalyptic Witchcraft Records at some point later this year. The new Thorns, if that finally gets released. The new Cloak, again, I know they announced signing to Metal Blade Records, so you would imagine there'd be a new record coming out this year. And then records that haven't been confirmed yet, but I'm kind of expecting to hear something based on the fact that their previous albums were a while away. There should be, I hope, in 2026, a new Mysterium record. And then, we're probably overdue for a new Funeral Mist album. So hopefully that comes out in 2026 as well. And then finally, I know that Swarthalv and the lads are working on a new Engangshammer album. That Engangshammer split EP that they did with Lictaren, that came out 2 years ago, I think. Fucking masterpiece. So I cannot wait to hear what a full-length Engangshammer album will sound like. I'm sure there's going to be more that come to mind, possibly on this very news rant. But those are the records that I'm most excited about off the top of my head right now. Okay, Inferi announce a new album, reveal their new lead single. Death metal band Inferi have announced their new album, Heaven Wept, due out on April the 10th via the Artisan era. At the same time, the band presented an official music video for the lead single, The Rapture of Dead Light. Saw a lot of hype about this on the socials, although, you know, I take some of that hype with a pinch of salt, considering some of the people that liked it. But a couple of people whose opinions I also really respect seem to dig this. So let's hear what The Rapture of Dead Light sounds like. I think the song has gotten better as the as time has moved along. When it first started, I was like, I don't know about this. This sounds, very clinical to me, and also I felt like this band makes a mistake that a lot of younger death metal bands or a lot of newer death metal bands make, which is it feels like they're too eager or too quick to try and get all their best tricks, all the best bits rammed into the song as quickly as possible. Like if you think about it in pro wrestling vernacular, sometimes you'll hear guys like, you'll hear wrestlers being interviewed and they'll talk about a match that they were in and they were like, I only had 5 minutes to get all my shit in. Meaning they only had 5 minutes to get all their best moves in. And I kind of feel like sometimes with younger death metal bands, they're too eager to show off their best bits, their best tricks too early on in a song. And so they never let the song really breathe. The song just feels like it's rushed and like there's just too much haste to the song, if that makes sense. Anyway, but as the song goes on, I think as we kind of hit minute one, first 60 seconds, I was like, actually there is more to this than my initial impression. And as the longer it's gone on, even though we stopped at about 2 minutes 30 seconds, it's actually not bad at all. Technically very, very good. I was going to praise the drumming of Spencer Moore, but turns out that post recording Heaven Wept, he's left the band and gone on to play in Archspire. But I mean, I think everybody here technically they can't be faulted. The production is a little bit too clinical, in my opinion. But again, that's typical of modern day death metal bands. but I think if you're into technical death metal, modern technical death metal, that then I think what Inferi offer you is something that is maybe a little bit more song forward, rather than just like, again, Nathan and I spoke about this, rather than just fretboard fucking jerking off. So yeah, so it's not bad. It's not blowing me away. Would probably need to hear the whole rest of the record to to be able to give you a full judgment of what it sounds like. Kudos to them though for actually putting a bit of effort into the music video. As much as I don't like humorous comedic music videos, but yeah, doesn't sound. I'd rather that again than grown men running around in their underwear on a music video. Okay, another question. Let's grab one here. We've got Animos host or underscore host. Would you be willing to interview some RABM artists when you find any that make quality music? Excellent question. Yes is the answer, but I would need to really like their music, number one. And number two, I'd need to be confident that it's going to be a productive and a interesting conversation. I'm not interested in having a political debate with somebody on this podcast. I actually want to steer further away from politics. Again, the caveat being, unless a guest comes on and it is specifically raised, or it is organically raised as part of the conversation. But for the most part, I find that especially when you talk to people that are on opposite ends of the political spectrum to you, in 2026, as you know, has been the case in the last decade, it just evolves into, feelings getting hurt and, emotions running high. And I'm just not fucking interested in any of that. So, as far as being, sympathizing with commies, that's never going to happen. I can't fucking stand it. I can't stand, most of the ideology of people in the RABM scene. That being said, I've got a lot of friends that have very differing views to me, and that's absolutely fine. And I've had a lot of very interesting conversations in my personal life with people that have very, very differing views to me. So if there's someone where I have that kind of connection or that kind of chemistry, where we can have a two-way debate and we can agree to disagree, and maybe even poke a little bit of fun at each other, and still maintain our decorum, then yes, I would. Is that likely to happen? No. So I'll tell you who I would actually have on the podcast. And I thought about this recently because I saw they had announced that they were making a new album. But I wouldn't mind having Bonnie Greenway on the show. I know I've spoken about it on the News Rant before, and I've kind of did it back and forth. But I think that would make for an interesting conversation. I've interviewed him twice before, so I know what he's like in person. I think that'd make a very interesting conversation. But yeah, I mean, I don't even really know off the top of my head of a single RABM band that I really like. I mean, initially I thought maybe Ultha fall in that camp. I mean, I certainly know Ralph's view on many political topics is very different to mine. But yeah, they're not in that scene per se. I don't actually think they'd be allowed in that scene per se, considering that they once shared a stage with Inquisition. So all right, another one. Grind Your Mind 77 has asked me, have you missed dropping the hammer on shit music? Funnily enough, yes, I have. I had a fantastic vacation. Mike Scandado, Sheriff Mike Scandado, mentioned on the Necromaniacs episode 300 intro that I took the longest Christmas vacation known to man. 5 weeks, I think, was a reasonable time. Although the last week I did actually have to work, but it was much needed. I was getting to a point last year where I was feeling just really, really burnt out. And I hope it didn't reflect in the quality of the episodes, but I did feel like I was really just from November time, I was just dragging myself to the finish line. So it was needed. But when I was away, I did think a lot about different things that I could do with a podcast, guests I would like to have on, that sort of thing. So yeah, I have missed it. One thing that I also noticed though, there are so many people that get so fucking butthurt over something that you say on the news rant. And even though I would then, if I listen to a band's song and I say the 2 minutes that I've heard I don't like, I sometimes will call it crap. I don't mean it as a personal slight against somebody in the band. It may very well be that I go on to listen to other songs of theirs and I go, actually, this is really good. And I have corrected myself on those things in public. But I noticed a couple of people, one dude in particular, who will go unnamed. I supported his band when they were, a fucking demo band. I, premiered one of their songs on the podcast just because I disliked, or not even disliked, like wasn't over the moon about one of their singles that I featured on the news rant. Unfriended on Facebook, unfollowed on Instagram. Like he just seems to have been absolutely livid. So people like that as well. You need to grow the fuck up. So if anything, that just makes me want to drop the hammer down even harder. Anyways, let's get on to some more music. Brandon Legion, fellow horseman, he was absolutely raving about the new Temple of Void single. And the last Temple of Void album was superb. So looking forward to this one. It says here, Temple of Void, 5th long player coming in March, US death doom metal crew Temple of Void is all set to return with their 5th studio album, The Crawl, due out on March the 6th, 2026 via Relapse Records, recorded at Kurt Ballu's God City studio in Salem. Ballu was assisted by engineer Zach Weeks, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to read all the fucking credits. Let's just hear what The Crawl sounds like. I need to go back to Summoning the Slayer, which was the previous Temple of Void album, and listen to that, because for whatever reason, my first impression is that this new Temple of Void track sounds a lot more old school than anything that I can recall of Summoning the Slayer. Not necessarily a bad thing, but there definitely feels like there's been a slightly more intentional shift towards old school death metal worship than perhaps we were given on the previous record. Mike Erdody, a vocalist, sounds really, really good. The song overall I think sounds very good as well. Again, a little hard to judge based on just 2 minutes, but this is a band that is of utmost quality in my opinion. I love Kurt Ballew's production as well. So the fact that that he was responsible for the recording, I think is a massive boost to this album already. And again, they got a pretty high bar to jump over if they're going to top Summoning the Slayer, because that really was a fucking superb album. But this one you can probably put on one of my most anticipated albums as well. The first 2 minutes of The Crawl, very good. I'm not completely blown away by it, but this is just a band where I expect brilliance, because their track record has been absolutely stellar. All right, 2 more questions. First of all, Alexi Fraser sends me a question, which I really like. Being the Testament fanboy that you are, pick one song from their 80s catalog, one song from the 90s to early 2000s, and then one from the recent era. So songs from those eras, for 80s Testament, Into the Pit is absolutely the best, no question about it. 90s, I'm going to go with Eyes of Wrath off The Gathering, which I know is going to probably come as a surprise to anybody who's a Testament fan, but I think The Gathering was a fucking excellent album. So runner-up there, or from the 90s, I would say Dog-Faced Gods or Flow. And then 2008 to present day, unquestionably the song Dark Roots of the Earth, taken from the album of the same name. One of the fucking best modern metal songs, or like modern thrash songs, written in the last 2 decades. No question about it. Henrik Metal Hell has asked, where did you get the idea to start doing your own podcast? I've spoken about this before, basically in 2019, or even before that, probably about 4 years before that, the idea started germinating. There just wasn't any metal podcasts that I really liked. The closest to something that I would have enjoyed came from Jamie Jaster. And Jamie Jaster's, his podcast was good, but he didn't really talk to, people from the extreme scene, like bands that I was massively interested in. So I kind of had this idea to do Joe Rogan talks to metal people, and then Joe Rogan talks to metal people. So basically long form podcasts with, people from the black and death metal scene. It just evolved into what the show ended up becoming. And, more and more, the show ended up becoming the podcast equivalent, at least I hope so, the podcast equivalent of Metal Maniacs magazine. But simple answer to your question. There wasn't really anything that was coming out or that was being put out at the time that I started this podcast that, was, to me, was what I would have liked to hear. So I ended up just doing something myself. Now, of course, there are tons of podcasts. And the fact that you're listening to this one, that's pretty goddamn cool. So thank you very, very much for that. One more song, and then we're going to wrap up. I know that some of you guys have been very excited about this one. And actually, I should have mentioned these guys from a highly anticipated perspective. But Permafog out of Tasmania in Australia are, I know, going to be following up their debut from 2024 with an album this year. And as luck would have it, they put out a new single entitled Frosthammer. So let's hear what this sounds like. As expected, absolutely fucking superb. And I just want to stress again, the Permafog debut that they put out back in 2024, that in my view is one of the best debuts from the last 5 years. Released independently, no fucking idea how this band hasn't been picked up by anyone yet. I can only imagine it's because they're from Australia and are as underground as it gets. But I mean, they've got a pedigree in the musicians that play in the band. It includes the mighty Jason Pepiat from Psychroptic. But just as far as like execution is concerned, this is just absolute tier one old school black metal worship, done in that off-kilter style that is typical to the very best Australian bands. I love the debut. Sounds like this new album is going to be superb as well. That gets a top notch, my friends. And Permafog also goes on the list of top albums I'm looking forward to. On that note, my friends, it's time to wrap up, but not before a swirly of the week. No. So for this week's Swirly, my friends, I need to first set the scene. Last week, a very good friend of the podcast, Cheyenne from Trivax, was invited onto the extremely popular Wyatt's Metal YouTube channel. Wyatt, of course, has been a guest on this podcast. Great dude, guy I back very much. And, when it comes to Cheyenne, when I call him my brother from another mother, I mean that literally. He really is one of my best friends and a guy who I think is a very important voice in music right now. Now, anyway, Cheyenne was invited onto Wyatt's Metal to talk about his experience of growing up in Iran, discovering metal, starting a band, and as you would expect, the conversation inevitably turned to current events, and that covered, in addition to many other things, the ongoing citizen uprising against the theocratic regime currently in charge of Iran. Now, by any measure, that interview was sober, it was informative, it was intelligent, articulate. I think that Cheyenne, especially considering the fact that he has a lot of friends and family still in Iran, I think that he managed to keep emotion out of it as much as possible, and really try and present, not only his lived experience, but also the bare facts. And I highly recommend that you watch the interview if you haven't already done so. The vast majority, and I say this because I need to be fair here. The vast majority of Wyatt's Metal subscribers clearly agreed. The comments, for the most part, were overwhelmingly positive, all apart from one slimy, sniveling, smooth brain who goes by the handle 8Dick2K10. In response to Cheyenne's criticism of the religious nutcases running Iran, who have, by the information that I'm aware of, killed as many as 20,000 protesters and seriously injured hundreds of thousands more as they've cracked down on this recent protest and on the dissent in the country, this genius posed what is potentially the fucking dumbest question of 2026 by writing, "So he's a white nationalist now." Note, he even included 2 question marks, or she or they or whatever the fuck they want to call themselves, included 2 question marks in the comment, almost like they couldn't believe that a guy who fronts a black metal band would have a dislike of government and of fascistic lunatics. Now, I don't know anything about 8Dick2K10, as I just mentioned a second ago, but, seeing them level the old white nationalist accusation at a man who's from Iran leads me to believe that they are probably card-carrying members of their local Antifa chapter, pathologically woke and chronically unemployed. When they're not on Reddit discussing so-called sus bands with their comrades, they are pretending to care about things like equal rights for women, racism, the destruction of the patriarchy, and of course, freeing Palestine. So you cannot help but scratch your head when these very people, and unfortunately 8Dick2K10 isn't alone in this, spring to the defense of one of the world's most tyrannical, hateful, and oppressive governments, and they then have the effrontery to reframe somebody's disdain for a particular religion as racism. as though religion is somehow a race. Never mind the fact that 8-Dick 2K10 probably still lives with their parents, has never known a day's hardship or a day's oppression in their entire life. They have their opinion, and somehow their opinion supersedes that of a man who's actually lived under that government. Like I said, has friends and family still based out of Iran, and has a much more valid and informed opinion than this fucking moron could ever hope to happen, or hope to have, I should say. Now, one thing that I am very certain of is that it doesn't matter if it's Islam, Buddhism, Christianity, or Joseph Smith and his goddamn magic Mormon underpants. If you're flying the flag for some fucking backwater, backwards religion in 2026, then you have absolutely no place being in the scene whatsoever. As a matter of fact, the only place that I consider suitable for you is with your underpants pulled over your ears off the back of a turbo wedgie and at the bottom of a toilet bowl. And that, my friends, is my swirly of the week. And that also brings us to the very end of episode 301. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Like I said, I'm back, and the 2026 campaign is in full swing. I will return next week alongside the Reverend Carl Haikara, counting down numbers 20 to 11 in my top 30 of 2025. I will also have Carl give his top 10 as we march closer to revealing the very best album, according to Into the Necrosphere of 2025. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure you come back again next week. From me to you, I hope that you have a fucking fantastic week ahead of you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers on Tuesday.